Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining me in the breakout session. We're going to talk a little bit about through Zero Trust, how you can simplify operations. We just concluded walking through the complexities that integrations, automations, and really visibility into how the business operates. It can become an overwhelmingly complex task, but if we shift how we think about applying simple principles to our operating philosophy, we can start getting on the journey potentially for those build forward or new initiatives that really enable us to move the organization and our posture forward. Next. So a lot of us can summarize what we talked about the last session through this image, where we're trying to move forward. We settle for some mediocrity as we're trying to increase velocity without really thinking, are we focused on the right strategy? Next. It's led us to this situation and where we wind up in Groundhog Day, right? Where we have a lot of the same problems, but no new solutions. And I'll tell you why the problem is hard and why we have the same problems. It's because we're in this notion where we're working against threats, and threats by their nature are unconstrained, right? Threats can't be quantified, so no system is really threat-proof by itself. There's also this notion of this thing called the global property, for those that are familiar with the Rainbow series that was released several decades ago. In order for something to be secure, you have to secure the whole thing. So a good example is that a fence itself is useless if it only goes around a portion of a property. In order to secure the entire property, you have to have a fence or control around the entire entity. That's not possible in information security. And so this insanity world that we're in now, it's a conundrum because we layer and we layer, we get complexity after complexity, we try to integrate our way out of it. But if we just shift our thinking a little bit, like defining and focusing on something called a protect surface, in which we'll get to here in a little bit, we can shift our focus and actually exponentially increase the amount of resiliency and business support that we try to deliver next. So you now have this notion of folks that are sitting in a CISO, CSO, director, head of, somebody who's in charge of a cybersecurity, information security function within an organization. And our roles have increasingly expanded, right? This is also leading to the insanity, because not only are you in charge of several dozen domains within information security compliance, sometimes privacy, you're having to maintain that relationship builder mindset. You need to know the business better than the business knows itself. And as a result, we sometimes feel that in order to address all of these, we have to layer technology after technology. So next, we've created this conundrum that Gartner has coined the cybersecurity mesh architecture. I would venture to say that a lot of organizations over the preceding few decades have accomplished something similar to this. And we're constantly looking for that API integration. We're looking for that automation to take outputs in inputs from one direction or the other. My vote is that this is probably a disservice to our field. So next, this is my analysis, my visibility. Some have tried to solve this problem by adding more and more and more. This is really not the direction we need to go. All you need at the end of the day are solid processes, risk management, visibility, and then we can move forward on the prioritized enforcement mechanisms that allow our organization to move at the speed and location of data. Technology is usually not the answer. Next, one of our industry's foremost experts actually has been, advocating this phrase for several years. So Bruce Schneier has consistently discussed that if you think technology by itself, the integration of or automation of, can solve your security problems, we really don't understand the problems, and we don't have a solid expectation and understanding of the technology. So with that said, what is the ideal path forward? Next. So we all talked about complexity and integration. A complex system is really easy to compromise. We've seen that. Some of us might have been the victim of that. Some of us have tried to resolve that. But why is it easy to compromise? It's easy to compromise because failure of just a single component can lead to unexpected and often insecure behavior of the entire system or enterprise. In addition to that, we have well-meaning policies and standards, but users tend to circumvent or bypass complex or time-consuming security controls in the name of efficiency or time savings. This in turn makes a lot of the controls we have ineffective. So we might have heard this KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. It's generally advocated amongst the entire IT and more so the security industry. It underlies many important tools and practices that things like least privilege. That's a restatement of the KISS principle as it applies to reassigning user accounts. Least functionality is a restatement as it applies to server and service provisioning in the cloud. And we need to think about the simplicity and keeping it simple across the enterprise, across all of our sales channels, and get down to what really matters. And that is this notion of trusted versus secure. Again, no system is actually secure because secure means free from vulnerabilities, which, as we all know, that's not a possibility. And when you get forward to the word trusted, we can then control the levels of trust in systems, which gets us to the next slide where we're talking about this whole notion of trust, where trust is actually the most dangerous vulnerability that underpins and detracts us away from effective integrations, automations, endpoint management, cloud management, and so forth. So if trust is really the vulnerability, there's only one true path out, and it causes us to rethink how we're applying our cybersecurity strategy. Next. So defining this notion of zero trust, that's really going to give us the path forward on a more simpler and business-aligned methodology. We have to start with the word trust. If you think about it, trust is nothing more than a human emotion. And as professionals, we've injected this into digital systems for absolutely no reason at all, except to make them function easier, right? Think about it. When the internet was first created, we had engineers that took advantage of the ease at which applications were exposed, and it was frictionless. And so it was easy to deliver enablement. Well, it was only after those applications were abused and misused did we start layering on technology like firewalls, endpoint management, so forth. The industry, unfortunately, continues to rely on this notion of implicit trust to make things function. This has created enormous implications for traditional security programs, right? Gates around the entry and exit of data. But no matter how much time, money, investment that we put into these things, adversaries are still breaching networks. Integrations still fail because we expose unencrypted information via API, or we don't know if information is leaking throughout the environment. So it turns out that the only thing that trust is good for in a digital system is for an adversary to hang out, because it's really the most dangerous vulnerability. It's both an exploit and a vulnerability at the same time. Think about that. That's really the foundation of our information system. So with a comprehensive approach, we can shift towards adjusting our grand strategy, focusing on what's called the protect surface. So identifying your business processes mapped to data, applications, assets, and services that make up that smallest combination of supporting that business process. It's only after understanding to an MVP level those business processes, you can start applying the right sized controls. And all we're talking about is security must become ubiquitous throughout the infrastructure, services, and design process. The whole notion of security by design and subsequently privacy by design is all focused on understanding what your protect surface is and how to support that just in time. It's really that simple, but it sounds much more complex because we lack the visibility into what's actually going on in the business. And so we can't articulate what the appropriate controls should be. Next. And so you start looking at how do you actually start this off and build towards a zero trust grand strategy. In the panel discussion, we talked time and time again about this notion of visibility, asset and data management itself. By simplifying, consolidating, and automating, we can focus on getting the correct values with that data management. And as we work up the chart, once you identify what your protect surface and your data is, you can start applying tags and classifications and govern said data and really build up into the core capabilities that you need to have processes on in order to start applying the zero trust principles. If you start at that identity and access management layer that a lot of potentially vendors or a lot of potentially other folks advocate for, you're missing half of the foundation, and it's really focused on said data. And that's what really sets you up for the true high value activity automation, the true process and tool simplification, and the true value that an integration would deliver. Next. So, I mean, we have to also then showcase how the work will be accomplished. So I've heard a lot of folks throughout my career say zero trust sounds great. How do we structure and propose and get buy-in on, changed policies? And I have followed what's called the Kiplinger method, and that's showcasing who, what, where, why, and how, and it's all focused on the business process. The first couple of times that you work through this with business unit owners, IT asset owners, and so forth, it might seem a little ambiguous. It might seem a little difficult to identify. But at the end of the day, you're going to be able, this will define your access rules. This will define and give you a roadmap onto how the business operates and give you options to recommend to the business based on their risk tolerance levels, how far we need to go on the zero trust spectrum to lock down access, but then logging for abnormal behavior, right? This is really your blueprint, not only for granting access, monitoring access, but also for maintaining business resiliency. Next. Another piece of this is the risk communication and the business ROI. I know that ROI and information security can be a very hot topic. We can go overly complicated with folks that look at things like the FAIR model, right? So that can be a very granular, very data-driven, trying to get very concrete, specific information to what risks cost. Or you could do something simple, likelihood times impact. I prefer a blended approach where you're talking about things like plausibility, your value at risk, which is a metric that is more often seen in the financial statement space, right, within the finance group. I usually articulate relying on the risk register, which is created and supported by my Protect surface, categories and subcategories of where our philosophy and strategy is delivering that true business value. So if we identify a business process, one of its subgroups might be privileged access, and we do a very simple impact analysis, right? So the plausibility of this is it's going to lead to a moderately high level of unplanned work if exploited based on our impact analysis. We think that our value at risk, so the amount of either, you can call it revenue if you tie it to revenue, profit, EBITDA, you name it, whatever your metrics are that communicate back to the organization, whatever values at risk that they care about, you should then be able to quantify based on the impact to that business process. And then based on adopting certain zero trust principles, depending on your risk tolerance, you can actually showcase what an adjusted value at risk is. So that delta gives you a minimum and maximum range of what those benefits that actually just changing a strategy might deliver to your business. It's very possible you may not have to make any investments in technology or people for this. Sometimes when you start aggregating a lot of the benefits, and you might need to recommend a control, but you're going to be able to showcase the benefits that are being delivered, and more often than not, you're going to be adding resiliency and risk mitigation to the business more than any other control costs. Next. And then to wrap it all out, we've all been grappling with this whole notion of data privacy. Global organizations obviously have more of a exposure to privacy considerations than some of those that are primarily domestic. But regardless, privacy is an ever-increasing topic. States throughout the United States are adopting their own privacy legislation. If you focus on the data itself, rooted in a zero trust strategy, you can apply those same principles and methodologies to support global privacy or regulatory obligations. Because at the end of the day, once you know what your data, where your data is, what it's classified, you can then structure policies to grant access at the right times, the right locations, the right services, and so forth, that allow you to enable and build privacy by design. And at the end of the day, this is what business enablement is all about, right? The fewest or single strategies that allow you to execute within a series of guardrails without dramatic deviations allows you to scale quicker, faster, and more nimble. Next. So bringing it all together, my biggest recommendation for anybody listening, if you're looking to get started, is we need to focus on our processes, right? Our standard work, and that notion of building out a Protect surface that can enrich our risk registers. We don't want to start and go scorched earth, right? This is a perfect opportunity that when net new projects, net new business functions, net new acquisitions, net new build outs, that is the prime opportune time if you really want to try to make the shift on seeing how a move to a zero trust enabled strategy can help you approach the problems differently. We then can translate benefits into risk resilience because you know how you're doing things currently. And if you apply a different lens through a new business process, new project, through the zero trust mindset, you should be able to translate those with some fair degree of ease after a few iterations on the exercises. Don't hesitate to reach out to other industry experts or peers too if you need to bounce ideas off of that. This also is you can also multiply. I apologize for the wrong word there, but you can multiply the impact through integrations and automations, right? Once you've defined and dialed in what that protect surface is and how your controls really need to be applied, you can more accurately create and code said integrations and said automations that have more high value and business line output. This also allows you to remain customer assessed and business aligned. I can't tell you more often than not, you're going to receive more enterprise support, more enterprise buy-in, more folks lining up to go with you on this journey if you can articulate and show how it is enabling sales to spin up a customer faster, right? How you can articulate your value proposition back to your potential end customer or into your internal customers that are consuming security services. It's all about enabling frictionless processes, the ability to submit exceptions, and the ability to think about things a little differently. So I'll pause there. I know we still have a few minutes in case there are any questions for the folks attending, and I'll open it up if there are any. Not seeing any questions yet in the chat, but don't hesitate. There, we can have any question, even comments or feedback. If you've tried deploying said zero trust strategies in your organizations, if you've tried to change the way you've thought a little bit, or have received resistance, right? We can even talk about some of those questions. How does this apply to certain verticals, right? I know that it's not generally all a one size fit all, but I think we can all agree that operating under a zero trust mindset, it's not about consuming technology. It's not about purchasing or partnering with a vendor that tries to coin themselves as a zero trust vendor because it's not a product at the end of the day, right? It's all about how we can incorporate principles that we've identified early on in the development of the risk management field into day-to-day process and kind of escape this insanity of compounding tool sets and complexity that we've been trying to automate and integrate our ways out of, but it's only through reevaluating, what our true goal is that can we really exit that insanity. Okay. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. Hopefully you found this educational, informational, somewhat thought-provoking. If you're interested in learning more or having an offline conversation, feel free to look me up on LinkedIn. I enjoy theorizing, but also showcasing how I've deployed said strategies in certain organizations. So I look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your attendance.